everyone, and welcome to the Jeff Bullis Show. Today I have with me Russ Rive. Now, Russ is in New York currently. I'm in Sydney, Australia. We're doing a virtual reality show, effectively, and we're going to get more into that in this discussion. Ross is a serial entrepreneur with experience building enterprise software as a service companies. In 1998, he founded Everdream, which is one of the first enterprise software as a service companies, with his brother Lyndon. It provided a platform for automating desktop management for large companies. Everdream was acquired by Dell, so that was his first exit. But he was still arriving. So after Everdream, Russ co-founded Superviz in 2004 with Liana Brazil, a high-tech immersive experience design agency, working at the intersection of architecture, design, art, and technology. A lot of this is going to be about immersive experiences and what is reality, and we're going to get into that more. Superviz's projects included Beyonce's performance at the United Nations headquarters of World Humanity Day and projections for the closing ceremonies of 2016 Olympics. And out of that, his current project is Superviz, which is born out of a Superviz's needs for remote collaboration, which is almost like mapping reality, virtual reality into one experience. So welcome to the show, Russ. I'm looking forward to our conversation.
Well, thanks, Jeff. Thanks for having me on board.
So, Russ, there seems to be a common thread to what you're doing and have been doing over the last, well, all your life by the sounds of it. So what got you into this area of basically creating experiences, both remote and in real life, as we call it?
Yeah. If I think all the way back, I've just always, I have a background in electronics and software, right? So when even growing up, I really enjoyed taking machines apart and putting them back together again. I had a bunch of different remote control toys, whether it was a car or boats or planes and things. I was always kind of fascinated by this, being able to remotely take my actions and put them somewhere else and build these machines and take them apart. And so when time came to go to university, I thought I'm going to study electronics, because electronics for me was that kind of like sorcery superpower. Like I can actually build anything at that point. Mm-hmm. Did the electronics and then went on to do software, because I realized that the next layer on top of that would be software. So then you could really pretty much build anything you want. And while I was doing this, the software, the second degree in software, this was around 96. So just as the first internet boom was starting in Silicon Valley, and for a summer job, a cousin of mine was starting a company called Zip2 at the time and asked me to come down for the summer to help them, because they just raised some funding. And I thought, okay, that'd be something fun to do during the summer of 96, to go down to Silicon Valley. I was up in Vancouver at the time. And of course I show up in Silicon Valley and it's like, there's nothing like it ever, right? So it's like the whole internet boom is starting. There's so much energy. It's all controlled by these like young, brilliant minds. It's exactly the scene I want to be in. Never ended up going back, never completed the computer science. I mean, ended up doing a lot of computer science, but not the degree. And then I was in Silicon Valley, in Palo Alto. I joined the company as the webmaster, which is like, it's almost funny, right? This sound, it sounds almost Dungeons and Dragons like. But back then there was this person called the webmaster, which took care of your server.
Yeah, I remember that, the webmaster. I know, that's what they called them. Well, maybe you were.
I was a webmaster.
Well, maybe you were, because back then we had the browser emerging, right? And that was like a window into another world. So you were master of the web. You gave access.
No, it was actually a fancy name for a pretty like plumber type job, right? I mean, basically back then, today you're like this AWS, and you just put your servers in the cloud, and you don't think of computers and power supplies and cables and network plugs. Back then, every company that had a service on the internet would have their aquarium in their office. You'd walk in, and beyond the lobby, you'd see this big glass wall with all the servers, and all the servers would literally run out of the office.
Yes.
Like there wasn't cloud. You wouldn't rent servers on a cloud. I mean, Loud Cloud would come a little bit after, right? And Dries and those guys, like Horowitz, they would just come a little later. So the webmaster was basically in charge of just keeping that machine running.
Yep.
At the same time, you have coders that are building stuff that's never been done before that crashes the servers all the time. Right? So it was like I had a pager, and so some of the first software that I would build was software to automate this data center to stay online and stay alive, because it would just keep. It was a door-to-door direction service, the first one that ever existed, right? Yellow Pages door-to-doors that was up to initially. That's what it was. And we had things like if someone put funny characters into the search box, it would crash the app, right? And so you would have to go there and restart the app on the servers. And so some of the first software I built there was to automate this problem of just like monitor the services. If anything happened, automatically do like the top 10 things. Like, okay, start the service, check that, clean the memory, reboot. Okay, that didn't work, reboot. Okay, after all that, now page me. So I was getting paged at 2, 3 in the morning, and I would literally like get in the car, drive down, reboot the server, go back to sleep. And I was like, okay, I've got to automate this stuff. So that was kind of the stuff that I was working on initially there in 96. And so in 98, I ended up leaving Zip2 to start Everdream, right? And just round about then, just a little bit after that, a couple of months after that, Zip2 was acquired by Compaq. And so that company ended up doing well first. So Zip2 was actually the first company that I participated in, joining the startup team, not as a founder, but the early team that had an exit. Also doing a service online. It wasn't a SaaS yet. They weren't charging monthly subscription, but there was like an advertising model and so on. And so taking a bit of that background of automating this data center to run, and also growing up being like one of the geeks in the family where the aunts and people would always call me for their computer problems. I had this idea of like, what if we could create a system that would automate the maintenance of these Windows PCs all around the place through the internet? Instead of like solving one single data center and automating that being stable, what if I could do a distributed system that would then do the basic stuff in all the computers, back them up, virus protection updates, distribute software, just like the basic day-to-day stuff that you need to be doing on Windows computers, which back then were pretty fragile. So that was the original idea, and it was actually a B2C idea at first, right? So we would build a machine that would again be in our office that we would sell computers as a subscription. It's like, you don't want to own a computer. Like, and I think again, you want to just like pay us $30-40 a month, and you'll have a computer. We'll give you the hardware. If the hardware breaks, we'll give you new hardware. It'll always work. We'll have the basics on it. We had this idea that there was one side of the computer that you could do anything you wanted to, install all the stuff, and there was the other side that was solid. You couldn't do anything to it. That ran the basics. It was an operating system. Office was there. Like your day-to-day get stuff done. You couldn't mess with that. But it gave you a scratch pad that every now and then you could just press a button and we just clean it up and you could start again. And so the idea was, let's rent computers as a service, right? To consumers. And we literally went door to door at first to prove this would work. And then once we got our initial round of funding, we quickly realized, okay, so we should be selling to business. Firstly, consumers it's a pretty tough place to get into. You got to sell millions and millions of them, and they're super finicky, right? They're not using these computers for a single task. They're like using them for thousands of different things. So, but businesses was basically looking for a utility machine, so we could get like a standardized package for business. So the initial idea then was a small business IT department. We'd be your virtual IT department for a per computer, per service, per month fee, and we would manage that remotely. And so. And that wasn't even called SaaS, enterprise SaaS. That was just this like crazy idea that you're going to rent these things instead of having people pay them and then pay you per service every time something went wrong. And so after time, we noticed that we started getting more. It was as tough to sell a company that had 1,000 computers as it was to sell a little architecture office or an accounting office that had 5 computers. And the IT people there knew what was going on. They're like, oh my God, this is like a really tough thing for me to deal with. I have all these distributed offices all over the place, which look like lots of little businesses. And so we transitioned over to enterprise SaaS, renting you the hardware, renting you all the services, backups. Asset tracking became a big thing. We have a CIO dashboard, so you could, in a web browser. Now remember, this is like 1999, like dial up. People were like dialing up to do this. So it was a lot of work to make this stuff work over 56K modems. And then T1 was a big connection back then, which is 1 megabyte.
Yeah.
And so we had this interface where the IT department could get full reports. They would see exactly where all their computers were, what the status of them was. If you stole memory out of a computer in one of the remote offices, the IT guy would get an alert because we would know that the hardware had changed. We would distribute your systems. We would even strip out all your hardware for you as a month-to-month subscription. And we also built a call center in parallel as a service as well. So it kind of was the full package of this virtual IT department. So the ideal customer for us were these large distributed enterprises. FedEx was a customer of ours, for example, towards the end. So a perfect example where you have thousands of little offices all over the place where you can't afford to have a dedicated IT guy on staff. We would become the virtual IT department to handle all that stuff for you. And so you can sort of see, this remote control and automating and again, this feeling of being like me being the computer geek to solve someone's problem remotely, this feeling of sort of telepresence IT service, you're sort of teleporting the skill to the location through the internet, this feeling of being somewhere else where than you physically are today. And only later I kind of started realizing that everything that I'm working on kind of has this kind of remote control, remote being somewhere, remote telepresence feeling to it. So anyway, so we've survived the dot-com crash, right? Because we founded in 1998. It goes through that 2000, 2001. The world explodes from as far as the internet servicing goes. We got this boring business, which is like selling computer services for a monthly fee. It's like the exciting stuff was selling pet food online and these like things that were all about like selling eyeballs and clicks and delivering like things that lost at scale. It was all weird. We had this like little steam engine that was going and building and making this real little business. So we survived all that. I mean, it wasn't easy. I'm not saying it like it was easy, but we did get through that. And so we built a real business. And in the end, Dell it worked out well because Dell was starting to get into the services business. So they needed to start layering services onto their computers' hardware business. And they looked out to the industry and found us as the leader in remote desktop management. Automated desktop management. We're already shipping out a lot of our agents on Dell computers. We standardized on Dell because it was at the time, it's like just like, if you want to maintain computers, you want to maintain Dell computers. It's like these guys, they don't break. And so we standardized on them. So there was also a way to get in. And then they bought us in a company called Silverback, which ironically did what I used to do as a webmaster. They automated the problem of control of managing data centers.
Okay.
So they combined us and that became Dell services for like big data center server automation plus the desktop automation and being able to offer that as services. Should I just keep going on the voyage? Are there any questions?
Well, it's like your that common thread, as you said, is something that's gone right through. You're basically providing a remote service to someone else. To someone else somewhere else, and essentially you are teleporting yourself in your skills, your expertise to fix a remote problem. Now it's sort of then you decided to take it to a whole new level, and you then went and started a company called Superviz.
Yeah, so Superviz was almost I was building this enterprise software company that was solving desktop management. So I mean, we were on version 8, 9 of the platform, but we're starting to get to the point where it's like, oh man, I need something more. I need to get my creative juices flowing again. It's a really exciting problem, but after a while, it's like, oh man, it's got to be something. Like, I need that fire again. So
it was like Groundhog Day, was it? You're a little bit over it.
Yeah, well, it was still cool. We were like building amazing things and doing amazing stuff, but the challenges weren't that revolutionary anymore. They were evolutionary and like little steps. Like, and you're basically making the machine faster and better and something happens in a company where you started and then the company, that startup journey, right? Everything's possible and it's like 3 people in a room and it's like super exciting and you can do anything and then you work on it for a couple of months, then you go into the valley, right? Where it's like, oh my God, this is never going to work. What we've been thinking, it's like, it's horrible. And then you start climbing yourself out of it again. And so we were kind of gone through that whole thing. I mean, it wasn't a done deal. It wasn't like Everdream was taking over the world. There was still a lot of stuff to do. But it was like, I wanted to just get back to that feeling of playing and building electronics and making all these like almost toys, right? Go back and build like a whole bunch of cool little things. And by chance, I had met Liana, who's now my wife, at Burning Man a couple of years before. We ended up selling Everdream, and she was doing her master's in interactive media in NYU. And she's Brazilian. She was doing it there, and I was in Silicon Valley. We happened to camp next to each other at Burning Man, and started dating long distance. But then I would start going to her showcases and stuff, and I'd see all these people working on these really cool, creative electronics and software and artistic projects. And I was like, oh man, I started doing this on the side even. I was just on my side little projects. I started playing and getting back to soldering and doing all these cool things. And then once Everdream wasn't really the thing to solve anymore. Ended up moving back with her to Brazil to take a year off and think, okay, so what is the next thing I want to be working on? And then during that year, we started building these little side projects of these creative experiments for interactive physical computing, basically at the intersection of art, technology, design, and architecture. So, putting projection mapped in rooms, making multi-touch surfaces, putting these virtual layers over the real world. And at the time, it still is very innovative, but at the time there wasn't anything like that. And you actually had to be a software engineer and electronic engineer to get these stuff done, right? You didn't have the modules that you did today. And I remember at the time thinking, okay, this is all fun and games, but what am I really going to be working on? It's like, what's the business? Because my mind was always, okay, I've got to create these like venture scalable companies. It can't, like this is more of a creative services company. But at the same time, it was super fun. I mean, we were like a prototype factory of building really cool, insane experiences, electronic sensors and body skeleton tracking and interacting in new ways with content, really pushing the limits on human technology interfaces that aren't keyboards and screens and things. It's like you would interact with your breath or your body movement and activate content. So
was that for shows? Was that for shows?
It's pretty much for it's a lot of educational museum sort of installations as well. So how do you take a very complex concept and turn it into an intuitive osmosis full body experience? So that kind of like thinking of how would you take one of my favorite examples is we created a periodic table. And at the time, multi-touch surfaces were like really, really new. Now, Jeff Hahn had just done that demo at TED. We worked, there was a couple of people online in forums trying to figure it out. You would like create your custom silicon glass with cameras and laser scanners to get multi-touch. What you do on an iPad today, there was this window where people were starting to demo the stuff on big surfaces, but many years before it was actually a reality. And so we would reverse engineer that stuff and make that work. And we created a periodic table where you would just drag these elements onto this like sort of magic cauldron area, and they would combine and create all these molecules and things, and then tell you where you'd mine them or what they were used for. And I remember on the opening day, there was this 6-year-old kid that the mother wanted to leave the museum, and he was crying because he didn't want to stop playing with the periodic table. Like, okay, so mommy, can I have more broccoli? It's like, okay, we've done something right here. But then that kind of stuff all the way through to just really crazy big party experiences too, like full immersive, massive DJ stages with lasers and smoke machines and projections, like just really thinking of sort of teleporting like creating these virtual layers over the real world and taking you to another place without physically going anywhere else. It's almost like you step into these places and you forget where you are, what the context was when you were outside of this room. Your entire imagination is captured and you're basically taken to another planet inside these rooms, whether it's full projections around it, whether it's a soundscape, whether something's tracking your body, whether it's tracking your body heat, whatever it was. It's just really exploring a lot of the physical virtual interaction layers. And so Superviz, Super Uber has been doing a lot of that kind of stuff. Like you said, the Beyonce project, the Olympics, many museums, a lot of brand activations, concept stores. You imagine going to a store, those kind of magic mirrors where you stand and you can try out all the clothes, all that kind of stuff. So we were like early pioneers and all that kind of thinking beyond the screen, beyond the keyboard, beyond the mouse. The idea of that technology feels like cold glass for us was irritating. Everything feels like your technology, you touch the screen, it's cold plastic, cold glass. So what if technology could be aware of you as opposed to you have to, interact with it through like a primate with little, our velocity of communication with technology, even to this day, is so slow, which is why the fear of AI is so scary, right? Because we communicate through serial characters.
Yes.
But when we interact human to human, there's like a parallel flow of emotions, of gesture, of voice, of intonations. There's much more bandwidth, right? So how can we take this communication bandwidth and bring it to an interface to technology? That whole area is like super interesting. And so we're exploring that. And again, this thread of teleporting you somewhere, making you a little confused as where does reality and where does the virtual start and end? This kind of membrane. Am I in? At what point did I leave reality? At what point am I in the virtual? This whole feeling of taking you somewhere else is fascinating. We really push the limits, experimenting on those sort of things.
So Super Uber basically wanted to touch all of your senses and take you somewhere else with all your senses, not just a visual experience. Like, TV's essentially 2 dimensions, isn't it? So it's visual and it's audio.
It's even worse than 2 dimensions. It's 16 by 9. It's like this little window on a 2 dimension. Yeah. I mean, if it was fully 2 dimension, it would be like the Matrix. It would just gone forever. It's 2 dimension limited by the little rectangle.
Yep. Yeah. So where's Super Uber today? Before we get on to Superviz.
Mm-hmm. So Super Uber is still very active. So I don't spend so much time on Super Uber these days. I'm mostly focused on Superviz. But Super Uber is still working on really interesting projects. On the same vein, still really doing a lot of experimentation and research. We have this lab in Super Uber where we're constantly playing with new concepts that aren't commissioned. So we give ourselves the liberty. It's almost like an artistic creative process where we experiment and play with things we would like to see and create opportunities for accidents to happen that then we can learn from, bring multidisciplinary people into a room. There's so many times that we found that an architect would solve a software problem or a software engineer would solve a design problem because they restate the problem in a different way.
Yes.
So it's not that they solve your software problem. They tell you that your problem is the wrong problem.
Yep.
It's like you're focused on this problem, but the problem is actually could be this instead.
Yep.
And so this magic at Super Uber is very, very cool. The way we have this multidisciplinary team solving and working on things together. So that's still going, and it's exciting. Yeah.
So where's Super Uber based? Where's the headquarters?
Headquarters of Super Uber is in Rio de Janeiro, in Brazil. Okay. Yeah, okay, cool. And we do projects all around the world from there. So science museums. We just did a piece for the London Design Museum about moving to Mars. We did a science museum in Miami. The projects there in New York. And that's how Superviz, the company I'm working on now, launched out as Super Uber because of a need we had internally of doing these projects all around the place. And how could we create something so I could do a remote visit at an install or a technical visit at a place that's across the world without having to get in a plane and fly out there and deal with that. And because we already thought and we imagined spaces in 360, when we think of creation, we really don't think of a screen. We think of the full body, all the way around experience. We said, well, I wonder if we took just a regular 360-degree photo with one of these little cameras, they're very available, throw it into a Unity app, and then build a socket, put in our 2 cameras inside of it, and just meet inside of this 360-degree photo. What if that? How would that? Like again, an experiment. Like, you think we could actually have like a half decent on-site meeting to discuss the place in a 360-degree photo? Even if it's 70% as good, that's amazing, right? Because you would, because a lot of times you're solving really basic problems. You don't have to. If you're having a problem in this room, it's like, where did the cable runs go? What's happening with the projector? We have an issue with flow. You could actually have a very productive meeting just inside of a regular 360-degree photo. If I could look anywhere I wanted to look, I had a laser pointing in my hand, a little pen that I could draw on stuff, and everybody was inside of that together. And so that was a little app we built inside of Super Uber, and that's how Superviz was born. Yeah.
I love the term when we were having a chat before we hit the record button, and you said Superviz is basically a group teleportation machine, which I normally start describing it as something that doesn't sound too crazy and wacky. I mean, but it is what we're building. It's a group teleportation machine that runs in a browser, right? You can simply drag your 360-degree content into the browser, literally drag it, click a button, generate a meeting link, like a Google Meet or whatever. It's literally just a meeting link. Send it to anybody through SMS or email. They click it. It opens up the browser, loads the entire 360 environment, loads all the avatars, loads the full video conferencing like this, webcams and everything, with avatars, pointers, and pens, and you have a meeting online. So, and the experience is a group teleportation experience. Like right now, where are we? We're nowhere.
Like we're like we're not. If afterwards I think back, it's like, yeah, Jeff and I, we were sitting. No, we weren't. We weren't together anywhere. We were kind of looking at each other through a pipe. We went somewhere.
Yep.
With Superviz, it's a presential experience. Your memory is being there, which is really powerful because it activates your presential memory, which is it's a very different type of memory than just if you're watching a video or a PowerPoint. For example, if you'd ask someone, it's like, describe the hotel room of your vacation 2 years ago. They'd be like, oh yeah, no problem, I can see it. Because it's a presential memory. As hunters and gatherers, to survive, our presential memories are basically photographic. Like, how do we find our way home?
Yeah. So tell us what.
So that's why it's so powerful. Yeah.
Presential memory. Describe that in a little bit more detail.
It's a memory you have of being somewhere.
Right.
And so, like when you are somewhere, you smell it, you hear it, you feel it, the temperature. You're really looking around. Your lizard brain's watching out for threats that could come in. You're alert. You really are present. This idea of being present somewhere is a very visceral, sensual experience, compared to just watching a webcam or just listening to music. You're not really. It doesn't activate the presential memory side of your brain. So with Superviz, we're trying to create like group presential, activate that whole presential memory and have a presential experience just through a browser or a VR. I mean, it runs in VR too if you would like to. You just activate the VR mode. And it started out as a VR app.
Right.
Yeah. But then we transitioned to make sure it was web VR because just the curve of adoption of VR is going to take a while. I mean, in the future, our vision is that this becomes very normal as we get AR goggles and everybody starts wearing these multi-use AR VR devices. The bandwidth gets so fast that we don't have to do the actual graphic calculation in the headset. It all happens in the cloud and it's just pixel streaming. So the device didn't have a format where you need small batteries and video decoders only. You don't need to do all the computation. The computation happens in the cloud. As that starts happening, we do see a future where it's very common for you to, like you and I would have the feeling of doing this sitting next to each other.
Yeah.
Like that to me, that's a very clear and obvious vision of not 20 years from now, it's 5 years from now, 10 years from now. And so that's kind of where we see the world going, and we want to participate in that. We think we could make a positive impact on that whole idea of being somewhere together virtually.
So that raises what's happened in the last 18 months, which is remote working, hybrid working, and everyone's been Zooming. So we're Zooming right here, right now. So essentially what you're doing is you're wanting to make this a presential experience, as in you want to involve every sense at a very visceral layer that's going to generate higher speed learning, better awareness. And essentially you're trying to create a Zoom on steroids.
Yeah. Yeah. In a way, I mean, right now, because using all your sensors, and it's going to take a while for us to get the smell and to get all the sensors in there. Right now, we want to focus on meetings where the location is the subject. I mean, that's the first step. Right. So right now, the location is the subject. The subject is the conversation, right?
Yep.
But if the subject was that room you're in, you'd be trying to walk around with your screen and kind of pointing at stuff because this medium is not designed for us to be in your room and discuss your room. Whereas with Superviz, it's about being there matters, when it is the subject. So if you look at our early traction that we're getting, right? It's the things that are obvious when the subject is the location. It's real estate sales. So COVID, how do you do apartment tours? Yep. There's been a huge boom in just 360 virtual tours, but there's a big thing missing in that. It's the actual being there together with the buyer and the seller and having that conversation as you're walking through that. I like to say like these 360 virtual tours is like the real estate agent drives you around and then says, okay, here's house number 1, and then waits in his car while you go in and take a look. And then when you come out, you might come back to him, but you might just walk off. He's like, wait, what did you think? So Superviz in that scenario is you set up the appointment and you walk through the apartment, you present the apartment, you hear the person, you point at things. You say, yes, this wall can be moved. Yes, this can be happen. That human interaction that happens when you are there, which starts missing. So early traction is anything to do with real estate, construction. This is an area that is ripe for innovation. They've started using 360-degree cameras already, so they already have this content, and then be able to be inside these places is a high value proposition for them. So this has been our early traction. And then on the other side, another area that we're seeing traction is education and training. Simulation training, activating the presential memory. So employee onboarding, safety training, factory tours, that kind of stuff. We're also seeing people using Superviz quite a bit. And because it's really, really simple to use. If you compare it to some of the other tools out there in this area, the tools tend to be very complicated. It's like you creating a 3D video game for every course you're trying to teach. With Superviz, you just have a 360 camera, take a couple of photos or videos, drag them into your browser, and then now you can start meeting people and having training sessions inside of them. So, yeah, so it's exciting. It's like, and then you mentioned COVID, like the pandemic. In retrospect, it seems like we're geniuses, right? It's like that's the problem. You can't physically meet somewhere, and of course we started this before that happened. We've been working on this for 2 years, so it has been a catalyst of people looking for ways to meet in places that they now can't meet when the subject is the location. And so that has also given us a boost.
Okay, that just as I'm listening to you, a couple of thoughts popped into my head. I'm trying to be as aware as possible because awareness is important, as we both know. I'm just thinking about the power of this. In other words, you're bringing all the senses in, you're trying to take people somewhere else, you're trying to make them presential. In other words, you're trying to touch them right at the core of their being. It's almost like, okay, I want to take them on a primal journey. I want them to be afraid, I want them to be excited, I want them to want something. And that maybe leads into the area of advertising. Do you see this platform that you're developing and growing and evolving as maybe taking people on a journey to touch their emotions, because advertising is about touching a range of emotions? It becomes a more powerful motivator to get people to click, buy this now, or go and visit a store or whatever.
Yeah, we do. We've done a couple of projects, and we have a couple of pilots going on for brand experience. So how do you really turn it into a brand experience, right? So, we like, at least at Super Uber, taking that experience to Superviz, we like to say, if you're gonna sell Coke, you don't put a sign up that says drink Coke. That's the obvious thing, but you have this feeling of it's no doubt this is Coca-Cola, right? It's much more powerful if you can turn the experience into the brand as opposed to put the brand on the experience, right? Yeah. And so that idea is also really powerful, and so branding as well as even events, right? So we also have pilots going on where you live stream someplace. So there's a place you need to go to. So right now as well, you can't go to all these places, but every meeting room in the live stream is like a VIP booth at any place. So you and your friends meet together inside a Superviz, inside of a live place. So it's as if you have your VIP table at an event where you can see each other in webcams, you have your avatars, you're all hanging out in the place, but you have front row seats in whatever place. So being able to have these branded or exciting or entertainment experiences together is also something that's really interesting.
Yeah.
It's like the problem with any startup is focus, right? And so it's like, okay, so we want to.
Yeah. There's a lot of opportunities. Okay, which one do we do?
So we have no doubt that in the future, it's gonna get very wide. This idea of teleportation to places. I mean, I look at my kids; they're teleporting mentally in places all day. Whether they're in Roblox or Minecraft or in the room with me, you can just see it in their eyes that their idea of being somewhere is it's such where are you? It becomes such an open-ended question, and we kind of feel it, right? I mean, so it's going to be so normal for you to be in just want to go somewhere else and be somewhere else in the future, and so. So we have this vision, and now you got to turn that vision into a viable business, right? It's like this sci-fi vision of the future, but then, so who's willing to pay for that now? And so what does it look like? What does the version look like that people are willing to pay for now? Okay, so it's about getting stuff done when the location is the subject of the conversation. And so that really helps you get the platform down, focus on what the features you need to be building out. But at the same time, you're constantly toying with these experiments that kind of push the limits. Let's get live 360 feeds in. It solves this current niche's problem, but it also starts opening these doors of minimum viable products for other experiments as you're moving along. But the problem is always bringing it back. Okay, focus, because we're gonna it's the classic death, right? You're basically doing too many things at once and nothing really, not focusing on anything.
It almost raises it's interesting. So you start with a passionate purpose, then you go and create something around that passionate purpose, that observation, that feeling. Then you share that with the world, okay, and then you're going, oh, this is great, and there's like all these doors open up. And I think it's really interesting, that's just the still for me concept, is essentially the monetization of that gets the focus back. Because, okay, how do I monetize this to actually take it to the world? Because we're going to fund it to take it to the world, to amplify it. Because you can't do everything, you've got to bring it back to here. And I think that the monetization side of it, the business model, it brings that into sharp focus.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Exactly. I mean, it's a Richard Branson saying that he says, how does it go? You don't make a business to make money. You make money to run the business. You know.
Yes.
It's like
yep.
You make money to have the business. Like
to have the business.
To have the business.
And
so,
to have,
but you don't like it's not the other way around. So
and to have the experience.
Like,
to have the experience,
exactly.
Because you're enjoying your journey. Obviously, I can see that. So, okay, how do I fund this bastard? How do I really actually continue the journey? Because it's so much fun, and I'm sure the movie creators are the same. The Steven Spielbergs and they're going, okay, this is so much fun. I need to make money out of it so I can keep doing more of it, and then it grows from there. So I love that quote by
success will take care of itself. If you but you got to turn it into milestones, right? And it's Liana, the co-founder, likes to say, it's like we can't give birth to a 60-year-old baby. We've got to reduce. It's like we've got to have a little toddler that can't walk and that's learning and it's like growing, and it's because your natural instinct is like because you're waking up, you're like walking, you have this like vision of like what this monster is gonna be and how amazing it's gonna be. It's like, okay, but you can't build that. You'll fail if you go straight for that, because first of all, it's too big and complicated, and secondly, it's just your imagination. You haven't spoken to customers, you haven't gotten critical feedback. You're always wrong. I mean, the passion might be right, and the intuition of the direction of the future might be right, but you have no idea. I mean, look, my background is so different to someone else's background, so you got to start doing the MVPs or the MLPs now, the minimal lovable product. Like, what's the little thing you can put out that you can start getting feedback on?
Stop right there. So MLP, I know. Okay, we're going to explain MVP to people. Minimal viable product. In other words, something you can get to the world and test in real life. That's a minimal viable product. Okay. MLP, please explain that.
It's a minimal lovable product.
Okay.
What's the smallest thing you can do that someone's going to love? A viable just kind of means like it's kind of, it's like, can you take it a little bit further? Can you get some emotion out of it? Can you make people go like, wow, that's cool, as opposed to like, wow, I guess that's viable.
Okay, so what you've said is, maybe because we have different accents, is minimal lovable product. Is that what you mean?
Yes.
Okay, minimal lovable product. I love that. So not lovable, lovable.
Lovable product.
Lovable product.
Yeah,
okay.
lovable product.
I haven't heard that. Did you make that up? Lovable product?
No, it's not my idea. It was I heard it the other day in a meeting. I would love to give credit to the guy. It was his name's Bruno. Is a guy we're working with in Portugal. I don't know his last name, but he was, when we were talking about, okay, we got to work on what's the smallest thing that we can prove the concept, or at least prove out our theory here that this is possible. And then he said, oh, we should make a minimal level product. And since then, I've been using that line. It's just because it explains it, because you need something where someone uses it and goes like, uh-huh, or like, wow, or like, cool. Because that's when you can engage. Like it might be viable, no one's going to give you feedback. It's like, you got to get someone excited. And we're into designing experiences, so it's got to be an experience. Love is an experience. Viability, it's not an experience.
No, viable's got no emotion. It's got no emotion.
Exactly.
Love, I believe love has some emotion attached to it, usually.
Exactly. It's like, wow, this is cool. I love this. I would love to see this work.
Maybe minimal lustable product. Okay, there you go. Can add another L to it, really.
Yeah.
Yeah. Oh, that's really awesome. So where are we up to today with Superviz?
In
product development, like what are there any real? Do you have a minimal lovable product at the moment?
We do have we got revenue coming in. We've launched the product. I'd say I consider the version 1. I'm not in, like I would call you up for a demo and not be thinking, oh my God, it's not going to work. It's like the version 1.1 is like, okay, this should work. And it's good to do everything I expect. Was launched in about January this year. So,
Okay.
and since then we've started to get a couple of customers on board, and it's getting out there. We've been focused. If you look at our team, it's all product development up until very recently. So only now we've started to hire marketing and a first marketing person, first salesperson. So up until then, it's been very word of mouth.
What's the lovable product? What's the lovable product? Can you tell us what that sort of area is, and what sort of area are your current customers in?
Like I mentioned, so the product is what we describe. It does everything we're saying. It's basically it's a group teleportation tool that runs in a browser. So you create these projects, which can be 360 degree cameras, scenes, photo scenes, any place that Google Street View's been. So you can put any address in the world if you want to. For example, why don't we have this on a beach in the Maldives instead? It can just be there instead. So we've API'd into Google, so you could have a meeting if you just want for fun, meet anywhere. So it has that. Also, just regular phone panoramas, you can throw that in and it'll wrap around you, and you could meet inside of those if you don't have a 360 camera with you. And then maps and floor plans and things like that. So it's got all that for projects. Single click, create meeting link, creates a unique link. People click that and loads the whole system. So it loads the whole 360 environment, all the avatars, full video conferencing experience. So webcams, screen share, mics, cameras, like a whole video conferencing engine on top of that as well, which we learned was actually very important, because we've been saying, oh, well, let's just teleport people into a place. And the feeling of just having avatars was missing the bandwidth of facial expression, of hands.
Yes.
Like it was important for us to have the webcam as well. So you have the webcams on the side and the avatars inside the scene. So that's our minimal level product right now. So easily create projects to meet anywhere, single click, load the entire thing up to someone. Someone can have a Superviz meeting with you without ever hearing of it. There's no software to download. They'll just receive a link, like a Zoom link, like a Google Meet link. They'll just click it, it'll open up, and it'll load it all up, and they'll be inside. If they're not to use video conferencing, they'll be inside.
And what sort of industry is it currently are your customers?
So the biggest one is real estate sales. Okay. So the idea of agents and customers doing tours of properties together as guided tours. And then the next we have construction management. So again, the location being the subject. Yep. Your big property developers.
Yep.
Where they have a headquarters in one city, but a lot of construction is going all around the place. So how do you get the structural engineer to go on site quickly to solve something without catching a plane? How do you do a presentation for the stakeholders to do a tour of the site remotely without having to go there? So that again is being really well received. And then on the education side, we have a couple of customers using it for employee onboarding. During COVID, for example, lots of people have been hired that have never seen the office. Yep. They don't know they've never been there. So this idea that they can walk through the office, show them around, give them a tour of the factory, give them like this onboarding experience of being somewhere with the team. We have customers using for that. Factory tours, as I mentioned. And we also have cultural centers using it. These exhibitions that have these art exhibitions, or even when it's just a virtual video art only. We built these 360-degree environments that shows all the video art where the customers and the public can go take these tours together. But the big thing is that they can take them in groups. So the curator of the museum can do group tours and take people through, point at stuff, give them the full experience of being there with the curator. Student groups, teacher groups can go together inside. Which is really important. That's the whole experience of being there with the guide, being there with the people, talking to your friends. If you visit a museum alone, it's one thing. You visit with a group of friends, it's a very different experience. There's the conversation that happens. So these are more of the fringe ones. And then we have people that are just using it for fun. I mean, it's something that we're not really focused on because like B2C for us, it's too early for B2C because you got to sell it, I think, with millions and millions of users, and it's still kind of an early concept. But there are a lot of people out there that are just using it as because of Zoom fatigue. It's like this. You're kind of tired of just looking at these little windows of people in webcams, and so let's meet on a beach. Let's meet on the surface of Mars. Let's meet somewhere else. And we brought the Rover 360 into Superviz, and you can just have a meeting there instead. And so it's just a different feeling of a meeting. Yeah.
Okay. So let's say we wanted to take this to a Superviz meeting.
Yeah.
What tools would I need? What's the process? Just simply.
Well, you just it's a browser, right? So you go in, create a Superviz account, you sign up for free, which gives you access to one free project, so you can create a project. If you don't even have content, you just use Street View. So choose any address in the world, beaches or wherever, so Times Square, and then click create a meeting link and send it out, and then you're inside. I mean, there's no software to download. It's really simple to do. If you have a 360-degree camera, you can take a photo of your place or the location of interest. Just drag it from your desktop into the browser, create a meeting link, and send it out, and you can meet there. You could literally, in a matter of 1 minute, create a project, create the scene, upload it, generate the meeting link, and send it out, and start meeting people inside of it.
So let's say we wanted to meet in the Caribbean. So could we say, okay, so we want to meet at this cafe with a view over the beach, with the islands in the background and noise of people around. Could we click on that link, and could your software take us there together?
Yeah, I mean, if Google Street View has photographed it, then we can go anywhere Google Street View has photographed it.
Can we add sound to it?
Google Street View and the people that are uploading 360 photos to the whole Google Maps. So any place that someone's posted one of those, we can piggyback on that content. And then you can add layers. You can add layers of content. So a soundtrack, you can add embed videos, text, notes, labels, even embed other websites or marketplaces inside. So you could create a virtual store or a link to another website or a checkout cart or anything inside of these as layers on top of these 360 scenes, annotation tools. Really, we put a lot of effort into making it simple. Making something complex and expensive is easy.
Okay. All right. Okay.
That's simple and elegant. That's tough.
Okay. So let me raise another scenario. Okay. Another scenario is I've just mixed up my working environment. I'll be working for the remote home office or the home office. I'm a little over that because it's just me. I don't even have a dog or a cat, not even a goldfish. So I need to mix this up a bit. So I've gone to a shared work environment where my editor works. And now we're sort of doing more, let's go to the whiteboard. We'll go to the meeting room, and we're actually sitting next to each other, and we get up on the board, we get down, we make a point, Could we create that sort of experience in Superviz, as in a virtual whiteboard meeting where we could bring the team in? Because I've got a team in Philippines, I've got them in Hungary, I've got them in Sydney, and I want to bring them all together, and I want to make them present. I want to create a more visceral meeting, I suppose is the best way to describe it.
You could do that. I mean, there are many tools that are focused on collaborative whiteboards, for example. That if the subject is a whiteboard, it might be better to use that, because the meeting room isn't the subject, right? In that case, it's not about the meeting room; it's about the whiteboard. Yes, we have annotation tools, and you could draw on it, and you could have a feeling of being in a room, but you wouldn't want to. It's kind of boring to take everyone into a meeting room. Yeah. So you might as well go into go walk in the redwood forests and have a meeting offsite somewhere and something more interesting. But you could do that. I mean, for instance, we have our dailies every day, so every department has their 10 minutes every morning to 10-15 minutes where we check in and we say, okay, we're a fully remote team, right? So Superviz doesn't have an office, never did. I mean, the culture and the vision of the company is that you can be anywhere and be together. So our team is all over the world. And every morning we do check-ins, and we choose a place on the planet to go and have these check-ins. And so sometimes we're hanging out on a beach and seeing what's happening today. Sometimes we're in Times Square. Sometimes we're in, Sydney. Who knows? And so it's just more fun. It's to be out there. Okay. So for those kind of stand-ups and talking, it's tough to describe. The feeling is different. You'll see, like when we're having this meeting, we'll remember the conversation. If you have a Superviz meeting, you remember being there. It's like we were somewhere. Like now we're not anywhere. We were actually somewhere. Yeah. Yeah. Okay. But again, this is like more the view, the vision of the future of this. As humanity, we're going to start thinking of realities as browsers in a tab, and you have like tabs in a browser, right? So this idea that I have multiple tabs open and I'm kind of flicking between them. In the future, we have this vision that we'll kind of think of those. It'll be multiple realities, and we kind of really start seeing that where like kids have like Roblox running in one tab, Minecraft running in another, and then reality up in front of them. This idea of us when like if someone in a room starts scanning their Instagram feed, you can see it in their eyes. They're not in that room anymore. Like they almost glazes over.
I do.
This person they've been they're doing backstroking dopamine somewhere, right? It's like not they're not present.
Their mind's been hijacked.
They're hijacked. They're not physically there anymore. They're somewhere else. It's almost like this surreal celestial place that they're floating around in, with these like 15-minute espresso shots of dopamine going by. You know, it's you can see that they've left there. So this idea of us, and it's a problem at the same time, right? Because we talked about this. We talked about this earlier about we're losing the ability to be present.
Yes.
Right. And present doesn't mean necessarily present physically. It's present could be present virtually too. It's more about focusing on one moment at that time, and the people are there with you, and trying to just keep that as this moment that's precious, and not be constantly being notified and interrupted the whole time. And so how do we make that more healthy, right? And so that's also a thing that we really enjoy exploring with Superviz. We hope we can have a positive impact on where this all goes. We don't want the dystopian future where we sitting in a corner jacked into like digital heroin and sitting there like it's like a very sad dystopian image. You want to kind of be present in all these places, but then be able to be present in really surreal and cool places. You know, not just stuck to physically where your atoms happen to be. You know.
So what you want to do is you want to enhance humanity, not subtract from it.
Yeah. So how do we not let this go? Like, how do we not let it turn out badly? Like, how does this not become a dystopian thing? So it's something that we feel like it's an important part of our mission. So does this feel human? Does this feel good? Does this feel like it's bringing something? We're not trying to do evil things for engagement. We want the feeling of like reward for being present as opposed to reward for being consuming, you know?
Yeah, it's a challenge because almost any tech can be twisted into some evil. Basically, Nobel created dynamite, which was used for good, and then it was turned to evil. Industrial killing instead of industrial mining. And we all thought social media was going to be pretty fantastic when it all started out, and we all enjoyed it, loved the actual connection to our tribes, and then it's become industrialized, and now the algorithms are stopping us from connecting because they want us to pay for attention now. That's interesting.
There's a lot of those, right?
Yep.
Even in the 90s, we had this vision of the internet being this totally distributed, and like no one's the owner. This idea that it would be finally decentralized, and it kind of started that way. It was wild. It was great, but you see, it's actually it's re-centralizing everything. It's centralizing around Amazon. It's centralizing around Google. You're having these like big monolithic machines that are centralizing power. You know, that's happening again. So how do you do that? So, cryptocurrency is an example of why is that so exciting now? Because it's like finally the decentralization is part of the way it works.
Yep, and guess what? And I believe crypto came out of the 2008 financial crisis because the big end of town basically led people down over the edge of the cliff, and the young guys said, no, we want control back, as in let's give it to the people instead of Wall Street running the show and selling us stuff that is toxic. And that's
decentralization, exactly. Yeah.
Yep.
That was the idea in the beginning of the whole thing. Yeah.
And not only is centralization happening within platforms, it's happening within countries. So we've got the Great Firewall of China, as a term quite often used, right? So this basically, social media has become a way to control the population instead of distributing, because social media for me was a great place to share my learning to the world. But then what's happened over time is the corporations, the platforms have gone, no, you're not going to reach the world. We're going to get you to pay to reach the world. So we're going to make money out of you. The reality now is that social media's great promise has been throttled and funneled into just financial gain for the big platforms. And sure, we're still having fun. But
I don't like in the end. I like the social media and being evil. I don't know about these days, but I think initially the idea wasn't evil.
No, it wasn't. It was fantastic.
It's the classic. I mean, it's the issue we have now with AI. It's like you got to be very careful what the goal is. Yeah. What is the win state for this algorithm?
Yep.
And the win state for algorithm, if it is like more money, more views, these are not satisfaction things. So without you really realizing it, you could be programming the goal of an AI to do something that you lose control of.
Yes.
Right. This is the fear of AI, is that we, like, the social media is going to be, it's like the monsters, the genie's been left out of the bottle. And it wasn't because people are like, let's manipulate the humans.
No, it wasn't. No, it never started that way.
If you want to optimize for quarter-over-quarter revenue growth and profitability, and that's how you're optimizing the algorithms, it'll find a way to do that.
Exactly.
And it turns out that the way to do that is infinite scroll, making people getting little dopamine shots the whole time. It's not like there was some evil genius trying to control humanity. It's just that that's what happens when the AI figures out how to get to its goal.
That's right. And so social media started and was a fantastic Wild West when it started. And there was, because I went and attended the World Youth Forum in Egypt, and there was a roundtable hosted by the president of Egypt. And there was two sides to the social media roundtable. One was, is social media for good or is social media for evil? And the truth, of course, is in the middle. It's the paradox of anything, right? Life is a paradox. We have life, we have death, we have pain, we have pleasure. The wisdom of the Tao sits somewhere in the middle. In other words, the real mystery sits in the middle somewhere. It's for me. I was right at the start and talked about it, and this is what you mentioned was, how can we take this, what you're doing to Superviz, and make it enhance humanity and use it to actually make things better. I think that's an awesome vision, and
it's in the name, right? Superviz, it's like a superpower. It's a supervision, not supervision as in like Big Brother, but like superhuman vision. How do I get this feeling of being able to feel and see and be, like, augment what we can do?
Be more aware.
Be more aware. Burn less jet fuel. Burn less gasoline. It's like, it's also got an environmental impact. Transportation of human atoms around the planet is extremely bad for the planet. Exactly. And so how can you do that less, and still get the advantages of being there together? So it's an important thing. So we can't say, this is evil. It's really important for us to solve this problem. And then how do we do this in a way that people, like, because we kind of now we're getting this generation of people that's seen how it can go bad. And so now we have this chance to, like, okay, this next phase we're going into, which is the, we went through, like, I remember this when I was growing up, we had to start doing this multitasking. We're this multitasking generation, right? And so the previous generation would be like, you guys are nuts. You guys are going crazy. Like, you can't handle all this multitasking, parallel threading the whole time. It turns out, we basically modified as if we've evolved, and we're these multitasking machines, and we're moving into multi-reality machines. So flipping between multiple realities. Like, now I'm in my Facebook feed, now I'm speaking to you, now I'm somewhere else, and I'm this constant context switching of realities. We're going to start becoming better and better at that. So multitasking became evil in the social media. Like, if you're in an elevator, you can't stand that 30 seconds if you don't open Twitter or Instagram. It becomes like, oh my God, I've got to be doing something the entire freaking time. And if I'm not doing these 3 things at a time, I feel like I'm a loser. So how do we learn from that? And so once we're moving into the multi-reality phase of like the feeling of human presence, how do we make that be like, okay, let me stay in this for a bit. Let me experience this reality. Let me consciously choose to leave this reality and go to another reality. What am I trying to get done when I go to this next reality? It's not just a place to, like, again, get a dopamine shot. It's a place because I'm going to learn something. I'm going to produce something. I'm going to make something. I'm going to contribute something in this reality. So we want to kind of bring those lessons through to the future of this multi-reality civilization.
I think that's an awesome vision. And to give people more vision and more awareness, I think it's fantastic. So how can people find you, Russ? Well,
I'm on LinkedIn and also superviz.com.
And your name's easy enough to find, Russ Rive. There's not many of you on the planet, just like there's not many Jeff Bulluses. So Russ Rive.
Russ Rive. Yeah.
Yep. So just Google Russ Rive, and I'm sure you'll turn up, must be ranking #1 on Google, I would say. Right.
Well, like, the algorithm just makes it seem that way to me. I think everyone Googles themselves, they tend to show up, right? And so I'm pretty easy to find. Yeah.
And Superviz is superviz.com.
Yep. Superviz with a Z.com.
Good. Okay.
Yeah. Superviz.com. Just reach out there. Even if you email info or contact, say, hey, I want to speak to Russ, you'll find me. There. Okay. Like, we're not huge. Right now we have about 13 people on the team, so it's a pretty cool little intimate team still.
Great. It's awesome.
Yeah.
Well, thank you for being a creator and sharing it with the world. And looking forward to see how it evolves. And I think I'll go and maybe try the platform out. I think now.
I'd love to show it to you someday. If you want to go in and meet somewhere.
Let's do it. Let's do it. That'd be fantastic.
Cool. Well, thanks for having me, Jeff. It's always fun.
Thanks, Russ. It's really great. All right.